On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's been a tough week for those having a hard time severing themselves from the Toronto Raptors championship era. Marc Gasol retired, Pascal Siakam and Precious Achiuwa had a titanic battle at MSG, and of course the Raptors play Fred VanVleet tonight. But will the return of Immanuel Quickley and Jakob help soothe the feelings of those feeling sad about the past? We'll get into that coming up on today's show with Katie Heindl. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, February the 2nd, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on that busted website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us over on the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link is in the description. Yesterday, as I missed the podcast, addled with COVID, did a little AMA in there, and it was a lot of fun. Helped me, pass the time, and it was nice to get some questions about some non-basketball stuff. So that's the type of stuff you'll get if you're hanging out in the Discord, among other things. Again, link in the description. Free to join. Would love to see you over there in our little Locked On Raptors listener community. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., etc. And you can join us on YouTube as well. Subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell. And when you do that, you'll get a heads up every single time the show is about to premiere. It'll just tell you to drop everything. Hey, Sean's talking. He didn't miss today's show. Jump on and listen, watch, do it all right now. Go ahead and do that. Thank you so much for supporting the show. However you support the show. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba. Use the code all lowercase Locked on NBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And we get rolling here, welcoming in Katie Heindl, our very favorite of all of the guests. This is no slight against everybody else. It's just a really high bar to clear. Katie from Dime Basketball Feelings, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well. First slice of sunlight this morning. I think I audibly gasped when I saw it. It's depressing to me how happy it makes me and how much it truly does affect my mood.
I'm just going to take all of my plants in the house and put them. We have this big window in the new house in the kitchen where just like the sun just flows in. I'm just going to put all the plants there. They can have a little plant party with one another and take in some sun and do some photosynthesis. Damn it. It's been so damn long. Yeah, it's very nice. We love the sun. So again, apologies for no show yesterday. It's been a bit of a sporadic week, I know, with no show on Monday as well. So just a heads up, there will be a podcast on Saturday to talk about the Raptors Rockets game. So you have that as a bit of a make good for missing yesterday's show. And I apologize for the various sounds that will be coming from me during this podcast as I am fighting with the stupid COVID. But here at podcast, we got a lot to get into today. Immanuel Quickley, Jakob both practiced yesterday. Seems like they might be back on the mend and ready to return as soon as tonight. Fingers crossed. It's long overdue and very much needed for this Raptors team to have those guys. Scottie Barnes, Ms. All-Star nod status. We'll talk about whether there was a snub there or not. And of course, we'll kick things off. It was a tough week, sad week, although a happy week as well. Marc Gasol retiring from basketball, ending the dream that he might one day return to the Toronto Raptors to play for them, which I, for some reason, held out hope for some dumb reason. For so many years when they didn't have a center, maybe they just call Marc up. It'll be fine. Of course, he retires, and a glorious, glorious career. A first-team All-NBA, a Defensive Player of the Year, I think 3-time All-Star, which doesn't sound like enough All-Stars for Marc Gasol, and of course won the championship with the Toronto Raptors. A favorite of both yours and mine, Katie. What kind of Marc Gasol-related feelings are you having this week? I had a blast on Wednesday, just kind of going through all the videos and highlights and going back to my Instagram, looking at the pictures of him doing the noodle arms when he was all drunk on the bus during the parade. Lots of fun Marc Gasol recollections this week, I'd say.
I talked about this on the radio with Blake and Will this week. We each kind of went down the line and talked about our fave Marc memories, and there's a lot of them. I was not surprised to know that most of theirs were also off the floor.
Yeah.
In the way that you just come to really, I was going to say love, but it feels a bit personal. But
it's okay. It's okay. Love is fine.
Admire and respect someone for the things that they've done. Obviously, all of his humanitarian work. I think I've always been so intrigued by the fact that he really likes to. He was just always someone who saw like well beyond the floor, and I think that was best encapsulated in him, deciding to leave the NBA, prematurely. Like he could still be on an NBA team if he wanted to, but kind of making like a lot of teams could use a center like him. He was like a backup. But he decided to go, wasn't really feeling it anymore. And I think I just really admire people whose definitions of success aren't necessarily tied to the very like stringent outlines of NBA success or bust. However, I think we're very lucky that we got some of the most successful parts of that NBA career, and that he, attributed obviously to such a special run with a championship team, with the follow-up could have, should have been title defense season, would have been, I really hold to.
Yeah.
But
If Pascal had not been cooped up in that condo for 5 months, we could be talking about back-to-back chips, baby.
Played basketball and been thinking about staying in shape for basketball instead of being so concerned about living and what was happening to the world, which you can't blame anybody for.
No, certainly not. This is not me saying, damn it, Pascal, why didn't you skirt the rules? No.
Yeah. Why didn't you break into a basketball, like into a gym in Toronto somewhere when everything was
just
closed?
Doesn't got that dog in him or whatever the hell the internet would say. God.
But it is bittersweet. I think, we're seeing the Lowry thing was lesser, but like I assume the Lowry to Hornets trade like also shows a career that's kind of like you don't have the same amount of desirability in the NBA to be able to call the shots that you once did. And to me, that means you have less time ahead of you in an NBA career than behind. And it's like a bittersweet feeling to see these guys get to that point. In Marc's case, to get to that point and decide that is enough. I'm always really interested in like what makes someone feel like it's enough. If people haven't yet watched the video that Marc put out on his Instagram, it's a really sweet kind of like look back. And I liked how he ended it. He ended it, he's like, I'm now going to be like the caretaker of this team, of this school that I bought and meant so much to me in Girona. And the video ends with him picking up basketballs on the floor and like passing them to little kids and being the steward and caretaker of the sport that he loves so much.
Ah, what a guy. We love Marc Gasol. And honestly, like thinking about his time with the Raptors, I mean, we could go through the litany of really good things that happened when he was on the floor with the Raptors in a very short time, right? It was like a year and a half we got with Marc Gasol actually on the team. You could go from that very first game at MSG where he steps in with the bench and is like just diamond dudes up and like throwing cross-court passes. And it's like, whoa, a center can do this? This is sweet. The way he kind of tied that team together. I always remember sort of like there was the Kawhi Leonard offense, then the Kyle and the rest offense. And then Marc was just kind of this dude who brought it all together into this one harmonious basketball juggernaut. Our pal Too Much Hoops over on YouTube shared a video of like his defensive highlights just from the finals that year, just hanging with Steph Curry on that perimeter the way very few centers have during the peak of Steph Curry's career. Really, really cool stuff. All the on-court stuff was there. And, you go into that 2019-20 season, which is just, to me, my favorite basketball season of all time, even with the way it finished and got interrupted by the pandemic. And it has me thinking, like, is there a Raptor who engendered so much goodwill with the team in such little time, right? Like the sort of fan joy per minute played sort of number, if that's an advanced stat we can find somewhere on dunks and threes or something. Like, I feel like Bismack comes to mind as like a single season fan favorite, but Marc might be the guy who I think most ingratiated himself into the fan base in the least amount of time. Am I crazy with that? Is this like just living in the moment, or am I kind of on something with that?
No, I think you're onto something. The Biz comparison is good. There's other guys like Amir lasted much more than a season, Amir Johnson, but I think about fan favorites in that sense and what endears people to fans. And I do think that Marc has that also because of the stamp of a championship and being such a contributor to that team.
And
but I think also
to quote Masai Ujiri, the greatest performance in parade history. Yeah, can't argue with that.
Of all time. I think he's a man with like a big personality. Real, just like, again, like a larger than life in the sense that he kind of came in, he understood what his job was in a basketball sense, but obviously endeared himself in a really personal way to everybody on that team, front office, and the people around him. And I think I would say too, like taught especially where they were at with their careers then, like Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, taught them a lot that they still carry with them and have now carried on to their next iterations.
Absolutely. We love Marc Gasol. And another sort of quick thing on why I love Marc Gasol. I mean, I was a big Gasol guy before he even came to the Raptors, because the grit and grind Grizzlies, to me, might be my favorite non-Toronto Raptors like era of a team of all time, and I think are a big reason why I kind of shaped the way I sort of operate as a fan, which is like, I'm not really here to root just for a championship. Like, give me a team that's pretty good and fun for multiple years, that kind of gives you that annual roller coaster ride of ups and downs. And yeah, maybe they don't have the upside of a championship team or whatever, but like there will be some really good stuff in there for you to glom onto. And I think those Grizzlies teams, evidenced by the fact that Gasol was like instantly getting his jersey retired upon retirement in a couple months' time, those teams for me are a really good example of, it doesn't always have to just be about, can they win a championship? Because I don't think anyone really believed those Grizzlies team could win a championship. Those teams rocked anyway. So shout out Marc Gasol, shout out the Grizzlies, shout out the 2019 Toronto Raptors. Good times. Katie, the 2024 Toronto Raptors, been less good times of late, although the last couple of games have been pretty fun, pretty spunky on the road. Third game of the road trip comes tonight. They're taking on the Houston Rockets, and we might see the returns of Immanuel, Quickley, and Jakob. We'll talk about what that means and why it's exciting coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the single best way to go and play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is download the app, and all you're doing is picking 2 to 6 players on a given entry in a given night, and whether they will get more or less than the Prize Picks projections in a given stat, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, receptions. It's all there for you. All sorts of different sports that you can play with. And of course, the big game is coming up. If you want to do an entry from the Specials League, which is a league created specifically for combo projections that feature 2 or more players from football and basketball, you can go ahead and do that for the big game. There will be NBA games that day. There, of course, will be the big game, and you can go and put a little Travis Kelce plus LeBron James action if you really, really wanted to go and do that. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured for football and basketball. If you got a player who goes down in the first half, doesn't come back, that player is rebooted, which means that Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. That's pretty sweet. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA. Use the code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA. Code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 with Prize Picks. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, we continue on here. Your first listen of the day, Katie Heindl from Diamond Basketball Feelings is along. We got some good news yesterday, Katie. Immanuel Quickley and Jakob Poeltl both practiced in full for the Toronto Raptors. RJ Barrett seems a little further away, practice without contact, which is something that's nice, progress. But it seems as though if the Raptors are going to get some help on the injury front, it could come tonight in the form of Immanuel Quickley and Jakob Poeltl. We may know by the time this publishes or by the time you listen, but it seems if it's not tonight, it should be on this road trip very soon, impending the returns of Immanuel Quickley and Jakob Poeltl. And I don't think it can be understated how important the returns of these guys are to the Toronto Raptors. They've obviously fought, nobly in the last couple of games, pulling out that fun win against the Bulls, Schroeder, Brown, etc., having a really nice game. The Hawks game was a roller coaster of emotion, and they simply cannot play a normal basketball game against the Hawks. Irritating loss, but some good stuff in there nonetheless. Jordan Moore is doing stuff. But Quickley and Poeltl, they're kind of the backbone of what this team wants to do on most possessions. Obviously, Scottie Barnes is very much involved here too. But Katie, to you, what excites you about the returns potentially of Quickley and Poeltl to this team as we still have a few games for the deadline? Obviously, I don't think they're going to start lying down and losing games on purpose. Winning and building winning habits seems to be the MO for the team in the front office right now. Quickley and Poeltl, obviously very important to that. What are you excited about, particularly about their returns that could be as soon as tonight? You're muted.
Oops. I'm excited for...
That was me.
Thanks, Sean. Something that I've talked about before, which is the long-term, figuring out what the identity of this team is going to be long-term and actually forming that, because they've gone all in on this rebuild. We're not even in the thick of it yet. We're just at the very beginning. We don't know what the team's going to look like, but I do assume that kind of speed that Quickley brings, obviously the shooting and the offensive possibilities he has paired with somebody like Scottie Barnes. Plus, you need Jakob back because you really just miss his presence around the rim. On the defensive end. Certainly, you kind of miss the screen possibilities of someone like him. And I think, to be fair, and this is going off things that Jakob Poeltl has himself said, he was so used to playing a certain kind of basketball with Pascal Siakam, and he hasn't really yet gotten to step into, again, what this next iteration of the team is going to look like with Quickley, with RJ Barrett, with Scottie Barnes to a degree, but he's got to synthesize. And I think that's what I guess that was like your plant thing from earlier sticking in my head, but I think that's probably what I'm most excited about, because I said this earlier this week, but what this is going to look like in a rebuild sense is that even in the really, I won't say really bad, but the lost nights, when the team can't pull out a win, there's still going to be incremental gains and incremental learnings that all of these guys are going to have to go through. And that's what's going to be the most interesting thing to watch, because the team won't always be competitive. That's sort of what they've set themselves up for now. But that learning is going to be on a much more granular level, almost like possession to possession kind of level. And I am excited to watch that more closely, because that's going to give hints to how the bigger picture is going to eventually look.
For sure. I think bringing both guys back, like, they each bring their own sort of particular elements, and then together they unlock a lot for this team as well. I think with Yak, you mentioned the just sort of having his presence there and the value of it. Like, he gives them a canvas upon which they can actually do development. You know what I mean? Like, he is there to grease the wheels of the offense. He's there to be the backline of defense, so Scottie Barnes doesn't have to do everything as the low man on defense. He can be there to kind of be in his support role. He puts everybody kind of into their optimal positions to succeed, and that extends to Immanuel Quickley as well, who we saw before he got hurt. There was a bit of a fall off there in terms of his offensive potency, and not coincidentally, it was tied basically directly to when when Jakob Poeltl went out of the lineup, and not having that that screening presence, that roll gravity that allows a pull-up shooting guard like Quickley to really kind of get loose. Like, Quickley is not a Steph Curry where he can kind of do it on his own, right? Like, there has to be someone there to kind of initiate the action with him, to kind of get him into the flow, to give him the space to operate. And I think those two working together, I mean, we've seen it, talking Fred VanVleet, who they'll see tonight. That was the whole thing last year, is Jakob Poeltl unlocked the best part of Fred's season in 2022-23, because the screening and rolling gravity is just so valuable for a guard who plays that style of game. And so, Quickley's development, there's still a lot to be done there, right? Finishing at the rim, being more aggressive, working on that pull up and making it more of a prominent part of his game. All the stuff we've talked about, that stuff becomes easier to facilitate development wise when Jakob Poeltl is there doing Jakob Poeltl things. And, this also applies to like Scottie Barnes, right? Like, Barnes has been super taxed over the last little while here. There's been a lot of attention paid to him. Credit to him. He's playmaked out of like the insane attention extremely well. It's been a lot of fun, but his offensive potency has fallen off. The 3-point shooting's not quite been there. And I think you bring Jakob Poeltl back in, it like reintroduces like half of the Raptors playbook, where Yak is so instrumental to so much of the stuff they run, but it also just gives a little reprieve to Scottie. Quickley does this too, right? Where, he doesn't have to be the be all end all of every possession. Every possession doesn't have to be him backing down into somebody, getting two and dropping it off to Thad Young for a bucket. Effective as that may be as a crunch time offense, they get to actually sort of mix it up a little here and add in some diversity to what they're doing, which I think will be very nice for, again, just sort of facilitating the development of everybody in a sort of harmonious environment that allows guys to sort of have their strengths optimized. What do you, on this, like, Quickley returns, the guard rotation obviously gets a little bit more cluttered. Bruce Brown, Dennis Schroeder, presumably one of them will move to the bench. Maybe both. Maybe we see like a Quickley, Poeltl, Barnes. God, who's even on the team? Wara? I don't know. Maybe like I'm sure one of Browner or they just need to get through the deadline so I know who's on the team, Katie, and also my brain needs to clear up. But as far as sort of downstream effects of these guys coming back, like who are you most interested to see how the returns of Yak and Quickley affect the sort of fitting in of other players on this squad? If that makes any sense as a question, I'm not sure if it does, but give me a break.
It does. I would have said Bruce Brown just because of his experience playing with someone. This is just in terms of like this is like player body prototype candidacy, not necessarily skill set candidacy. But obviously Nikola Jokic and someone like Miles Turner, it did make me interested to see how Bruce Brown could play off Jakob Poeltl, though I just don't think Bruce Brown is going to be sticking around, unfortunately. It pains me deeply to say that.
I'm feeling optimistic he's going to stick around, Katie.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm crazy.
I don't know.
But I just I use this. You carry on. I'll do a Bruce
I've heard
Brown
some things is all I'll say. But okay. So it would be great. It would be great if he did. I'll say that. But I think the clutteredness that you mentioned of the guards situation, because there are a lot of them, that itself might also clarify a little bit more. I think Schroeder has shown pretty good stretches, but there's been some regression I haven't necessarily liked watching in terms of like falling back on old habits a little bit. Sure. But I also think someone like Jakob Poeltl helps to clarify that a little bit just because he kind of declutters the floor. I think, again, like to go back to what I said earlier, the shape of the team is still forming and it can't really until you've got everybody healthy, you've got them back playing minutes together. Dargo can, I don't know, is he going to get back to like a 10-man, his like 10-man rotational dream? Can he do that with this team? I'm sort of curious to see that. It's things I think the goal is to play quite fluidly, to have your set starters, but to have a lot of other rotational options, and to really develop the bench, so who you can call on for X amount of minutes here and there. Your question did make sense, but I think the team itself does not necessarily make sense enough right now to answer your question.
Yeah, here's another thing I'm excited for just to get the guys back is usable lineup data. Like this January's just been this like, usually before I do the podcast, I have a routine. I'll go check the numbers, see where things are at. And then, the trades happen, the injuries all happen. And it's like, this is just like a dead zone where none of the numbers mean anything or make any sense. Give me some numbers that I can use to back up my arguments in a very favorable way, please. It's kind of what I'm thinking here. On the Bruce Brown thing, yeah, I'm interested to see where he kind of slots in. I continue to think he makes a lot of sense as a piece on this team, as like an agent for development and, being competent, connecting, tying things together, sort of lifting all boats, etc. And I used this analogy last night and I was pretty proud of it in the Discord, and I'll just bring it to the podcast. This is what you get when you go to the Discord. You get like me ruminating things that will appear on the show one day. Trading Bruce Brown this week by the deadline, to me, feels like if you're on a road trip and you get off the first time you see a sign for a Subway because you're hungry. It's like, okay, it's there. It's the first thing. All right, whatever. You could do a lot better. So yeah, like you get the little sign. It's like, oh, I'm really hungry. First thing you see is a Subway. You hop off, you get your Subway. You're kind of disappointed. Maybe you get like a good sandwich and you're fine with it. But like, okay, Quentin Grimes and Evan Fournier. Well, sure, Subway. What if there's a Popeyes 2 exits away? You know what I mean? Like there's opportunities down the line to trade Bruce Brown, to potentially get more, to use him in an additive trade as opposed to like just a sell-off to a contender, to use him on your team as a piece who fits with your players as you get good. Like if you get good next year, or if Scottie Barnes takes another jump, you'll be like, man, it'd be nice to have a guy like Bruce Brown on this team to kind of tie things together. That's the Popeyes. And at the very worst, there's Subways everywhere. It's like the most popular chain restaurant in the world. 4 exits later, there will be a Subway if you have to at next year's deadline to go and get yourself a sweet onion chicken teriyaki. You know what I mean? Like, is that a strained analogy? I just feel like trading Bruce Brown because you can at this deadline is maybe going to bring in some opportunity cost, where down the line you could have either had him on your team or moved him at a different, more opportune juncture for something a little more exciting than some contenders, salary ballast, and a pick. I don't know.
I agree
That's
with
kind of where I'm
you.
at.
I
Okay,
just don't think it's going to happen, but I agree
yeah.
with you.
They should listen to us, Katie, is the thing. The front office should listen to us and do what we say. That's the takeaway here. We'll come back on the other side, Katie. We're going to round it out. Talking about Scottie Barnes. Didn't make All-Star. Is that a problem? Should he have made it over Paolo Banchero? Yes, but we'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in all the land. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. People, I don't watch football. I don't even watch the Super Bowl, but if I were watching the Super Bowl, that's exactly what I would be doing. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bets or more. Sorry, if your first bet of $5 or more wins, that COVID brain really not helping me read this copy very well. But either way, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to go and sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet of $5 or more wins, make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL and of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, rounding out the show here on your Friday, a reminder before we get into Scottie Barnes and All-Star talk, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is our ongoing 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You got to go subscribe, and all day long you'll get Locked On shows, national shows, local stories, local shows covering the biggest stories. All of it's there. A wonderful thing to just put on in the background while you work and get those Locked On pods right into your ears or your eyes, whatever it is, all day long. Again, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 on YouTube. Okay, Katie. Scottie Barnes does not make the NBA All-Star squad. Not surprising, I would say. I think when you're 17 and 30, the coaches are probably not going to look too favorably upon that. But I do think you could look at the cast of guys who made the Eastern Conference All-Star team and say, Scottie Barnes, on merit, has been better than some of these guys so far this year. Are you feeling indignant? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling mad about Scottie Barnes being snubbed of his first All-Star nod? Or do you think this is pretty much par for the course and there'll be many All-Stars in Scottie Barnes' future? So to kind of soothe all of the bad feelings of him not making it this year.
My hope is there'll be many more in his future. I think this proves to me what I already knew, which is usually All-Star selections, not candidacy, but selections are more of an optics game. I think your point of needing to be on a marginally good winning team also helps just get you on the radar. Another thing I think kind of hurt him, because I do think at the beginning of the year, and I did a no dunk spot where we talked about this, it made a lot more sense to me when the team looked how it did with Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby still on the team, then that he would kind of get the nod and get the vote because like he had the cast around him.
Sure.
In Pascal Siakam's case, like a former All-Star himself, I do think that kind of helps in terms of your candidacy. You're rubbing shoulders with other stars on your team. Now he's the only would-be star on the team, pretty young. We obviously think he's there, but I think the way he measures up to some of the All-Stars, not so much. Again, in that optics sense of the word.
Sure.
But yeah, not surprised. I think this just holds true to the way that the team morphed and changed from, what would I say, November to now, probably.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to look at a team with as much flux as the Toronto Raptors. None of it's Scottie Barnes' fault, but just like the reality of the body, the moves in and out, the guys who've been traded, the injuries, the lack of any sort of continuity or through line to this team. Like a lot of this stuff is narrative based. A lot of this stuff is frankly kind of predetermined based on what happens in the first couple months of the season. Like Paolo Banchero, I think probably is in the All-Star game because the Magic had that really hot start and had like a 10-game winning streak. They've been not very good since then, kind of run of the mill. Their offense stinks, all this stuff. His numbers have come back crashing to earth. But because the Magic were the hot, fun thing for a couple of months, that sticks in people's brains. The Toronto Raptors have never been the hot, fun thing this year for even 1 second. Maybe the little stretch after the OG trade, before the Pascal trade, before Yacht got hurt, like 4 beautiful, sweet games. That's about it when the Raptors were a hot, fun, cool thing. And so I'm not surprised. And frankly, like, I get it. Like, I typically do favor winning over sort of, like, I don't think Trae Young should be an all-star because that team stinks. And like, I think you should probably be on a team that wins to make the all-star game. So I don't think it's like some great injustice that Scottie Barnes didn't make it here. That said, I take Scottie Barnes' season over Paolo Banchero's. I take Scottie Barnes' season over Jaylen Brown's, probably. Jaylen Brown, probably like the third most deserving Celtic to be on an all-star team, but that's for another day. At a different podcast. I'll go on Locked On Celtics and wax poetic over there with our pal John Corrales if I need to. But so whenever we do this game, Scottie should have been an all-star, or someone should have been an all-star, player X should have been there. You have to play the game of who would you take off? And, sometimes it's hard. The Western Conference is impossible. The Western Conference is so stacked. It's really hard to leave any of these players off the all-star team. The East, I think probably a little bit less. If you had to take one player off the East all-star team, Katie, and add Scottie Barnes to it, who would it be?
I mean, I'll be totally real with you. I haven't looked at all of the all-star.
All right, so the reserves, you got
selections.
Bam.
Scottie, I would never take Bam off.
Okay, Paolo.
No, I disagree with you there.
Okay, Jaylen Brown.
Maybe.
Come on, Katie.
Let me hear the rest.
Jalen Brunson, obviously, he's an all-star. Tyrese Maxey, obviously an all-star, right?
Yes.
Donovan Mitchell, incredible. Julius Randle's the last one.
So I had to mute to yell at Jeans. I think she just ate a fly.
Oh, no.
She's just in the window. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's a cameo from my weird cat, Jeans. Who was the last?
Julius Randle, who's probably going to need an injury replacement anyway.
Yeah, true. Well, not on merit for Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Jaylen Brown. I think Paolo, I guess I do think Paolo and the Magic do kind of deserve it. And Paolo had a great season last season too, which was more under the radar kind of season. So I can't really just, quibble with that. Bam always deserves to be there. Yeah.
All right. So Brown. I'll pose this one to you. It seems like the East is going to need 2 injury replacements, Joel Embiid and Julius Randle. I don't think Scottie makes it. I think there are lots of other. I'll rattle off some names and you tell me whether you would have Scottie over them as injury replacements. Jarrett Allen for the Cavs, who have been amazing. Yeah, Jarrett Allen's awesome.
Crazy you even had to ask me that, but no.
I know. I had to ask you about Jarrett Allen. You're on the podcast. It's 2 on brand. So there's that. Pascal Siakam, kind of sneakily, really good, and the game is in Indiana. I don't know. Pascal, Scottie, who you got?
Oh, between the two of them?
Yeah, if we're just going for injury replacements.
Like, it would be nice. It would be nice for Pascal, obviously, to be on the team because the All-Star game is in Indy. It would be sad to me to be an injury reserve ask 2 years in a row.
Yeah, pretty unjust that 2 of his 3 All-Stars would have been that. He deserves probably more than that on his own merit, but it's tough. The All-Star game, this should also expand to 15 players. Jackson Frank made a really good point of this online. It was 12 players back in 1982 or whatever, when there was 23 teams. Maybe we expand to reflect the larger league and the enormous pool of talent, but that's just me. Trae Young, Scottie Barnes, who you got?
Scottie Barnes.
Yeah, come on. What are we talking about? Get over it. Yeah, defense matters. Scottie Barnes, one of the best defenders in basketball.
I get why Trae Young is there. I understand completely, but yeah.
Well, he's not there, but as an injury replacement.
Yeah, as an injury replacement. I get why he would be.
A third Celtic, either Kristaps Porzingis or Derek White versus Scottie Barnes.
Though I do like Derek White.
Derek White's cool. Scottie's better. Maybe he's better. I don't know. Derek White might be the second best Celtics. Maybe I'm telling tales out of school on that one. Either way, I think Scottie's probably like 4th or 5th as far as injury replacement guys, and I think that's fine. I think he'll get there at some point. Obviously, the defensive jump is pretty substantial, and that has been, I think, tied to him being one of the best all catch-all metrics guys this year. if you're just going on those metrics, it's like the Kyle Lowry case from back in the day where it's like, oh, this guy's like a top 5 player because of all the metrics. He should probably be an all-star. Scottie's not quite at that tier. He's sort of like in the teens as far as the catch-all metrics in a lot of cases. But maybe it's just like a thing where it takes a year to catch on and he becomes like a coach vote guy a year from now. I think it's fine. Did we have a final segment here about Scottie and an all-star just to like kind of be newsworthy and all that? Sort of. Do I feel that strongly about it? Absolutely not. Have a good vacation, Scottie. I'm sure it'll be good times. Katie, thank you so much for joining the pod. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
No, I will promote the arts in Toronto. I went to the opening of a show called Winners and Losers, which is at Museum, which is a Toronto not-for-profit arts organization that does like to profile and chronicle the history of the city itself. They now have a brick and mortar space, which is where this exhibit is. It's at 401 Richmond. If you don't know that compound, it's a really cool old building that has been converted. A lot of arts offices are in there. I think Contact, the photography organization, is in there too. Anyway, the show is totally free. It chronicles history of Toronto baseball, hockey, football, basketball, lacrosse, with memorabilia, really like interesting kind of facts. It was curated by a sports writer and just like a real kind of nerdy Toronto sports historian. It's not going to take you more than 15 minutes to kind of go through, 20 if you're really reading. But I enjoyed the opening, and I feel like you should support the arts in Toronto whenever you can.
I could not co-sign that enough. That sounds awesome. It sounds like something I'll make the trip into town for once I'm not afflicted by the plague. That sounds fantastic. I'm also a big plaque reader at any museum or art gallery.
There's a lot of plaques.
I'm a little sicko for a
There's
plaque.
something you'd really like, which is in the basketball section. They kind of have a bracket where you can pick, because these are not Canadian sports moments. They're all kind of sports moments that really originate in Toronto. Oh, there's boxing too. I left that out. Anyway, they have like a bracket where you can pick your best moment in Toronto basketball history, like all the way to a title.
Ooh.
Which I think, like, I know you enjoy that format, Sean.
I do love a bracket. There is no doubt, especially
and
if
like
I
a
can
moments
choose
bracket.
Terrence Ross winning a dunk contest as my number one.
I don't think he was on there. They had like it's pre-made.
Sorry, I'm deleting the entire promotion of this.
Though I will say, Sean, there's also a section where you can write down a moment that they missed and add it for consideration.
All right. All right, we're back on track. Support the arts in Toronto. That's an awesome plug. Katie, I will also go and plug Basketball Feelings, which is the best. Everyone should go subscribe. Be a paid subscriber. It's highly recommended by me. That'll do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again on Saturday to talk about Raptors, Rockets, and hopefully I'll have less sounds coming from my face that are unpleasant. Thank you for putting up with them today. We'll be back with a full schedule of shows, of course, next week as well. Till then, thank you so much. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., etc. Thanks for hanging. We'll talk to you on Saturday. Bye-bye.